Norfolk voters head to the polls May 4th to elect a new mayor of the city that promotes itself as the heart of the Virginia waterfront. What issues are at the heart of this election? Tonight, a conversation with all four candidates. This is What Matters. Good evening, I'm Cathy Lewis. There are three candidates seeking to oust the incumbent mayor in Norfolk, and tonight we'll talk with all four candidates on the May 4th ballot. Joining us, the mayor of Norfolk seeking re-election, Paul Fraim, Norfolk City Councilwoman Daun Hester. Also with us, challengers Daniel Montague and Ryan Cooper. Now, during our conversation, as we did when we interviewed the candidates for Mayor Newport News, I'll do the best I can within the confines of actual conversation to offer as close as we can to equal time to all the candidates. But we'll start by giving each of the candidates 90 seconds to introduce themselves and tell us why they want your vote. Now, before the show, we quite literally drew straws to see who would go first. And even though he wanted to go last, Daniel Montague drew the short straw to go first. Nice to have you with us, and feel free. You may look at that camera right over there, camera one, or you can look at me, whatever you prefer, and
what about both of you?
That'll work just fine.
Well, I'm Dan Montague. Daniel is just a little bit too formal for me. I'm a retired construction worker, and also I put a little time in it at the shipyard, local shipyard here. But I've been back here 25 years, and I haven't seen the progress that I have seen in all the rest of the country. I want this area to go and grow. My niece is getting married next month, and I want her and her new husband to be able to make a living here, raise their family here, and have their kids have a real good education. And like I have said over and over and over again, I want this region here to be on a par with the rest of the country. We ought to be light years ahead of them because the whole country started 75 miles up the road. And anyway, why aren't we? We have lagged behind on everything. It just seems like we just don't do anything the right way or the competent way. And I just want to see this area just take off and go and grow like I know I can push it. I have worked and I have run good-sized jobs. And the thing about it is, I love a challenge. I used to break wild horses out west, and when I bought them off the Indian reservation. But the thing about it is, you know, I enjoy a challenge.
Thank you very much. Ryan Cooper, I think you drew the second to the shortest straw. Nice to have you with us tonight. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to be mayor.
Well, I am 21 years old. I am a student at Old Dominion University. I am currently working on finishing my degree in international business. The whole campaign, my campaign has gotten started because of a concern with the public safety here in Norfolk. I have spent my time trying to focus on that issue specifically and different things that play into that. There's a lot of different factors that come in, and so I've been trying to find the best course of action in order to improve our public safety, what different things we can do, and I've come up with several different things. One of the first, of course, was the police officers. If I'm elected mayor, I would like to redirect more funding towards our police force. That way we can have more beat cops. That's a time-honored tradition that does a lot for public safety. But then more than just funding the cops, I've realized that a lot of the issue comes into play with our public school system and the fact that they really do need a little bit more in the way of funding, especially with the states that we've got, the cuts we've got coming down from the state government. And if we were to focus a little bit more on the public schools and offer them some more funding, then we would give the children of the city more opportunity and able to get up and have more success.
Thank you very much. That's Ryan Cooper. Councilwoman Hester, you got the third straw, so
yes,
have
I
at
did,
it.
the pink straw. Thank you for the opportunity
You're
to
welcome.
come and share this information with our citizens. I am Daun Hester, lifelong resident of Norfolk, a product of its school system, so I know that our schools are working and can be the best and will be better than they are now. I am running to bring a new style of leadership to our government, to reignite, re-engage, and re-energize our citizens so that they will be involved in all that we are doing, that we will open our doors for more transparent government, and that means showing on television all of our meetings, informal and formal. I'd like to even extend that even to beyond to our boards and commissions, our planning commission, school board, and redevelopment and housing authority, because that's where the bulk of our dollars are. But I really want to make sure that our citizens are engaged and want to participate, and I want them to participate. And I also want to provide and bring new ideas to how we can lead our city into the future. I'm working with the National League of Cities and the Virginia Municipal League. There are wonderful models out there that we should be engaging and bringing to our citizens and working with our citizens to do. But I really want every neighborhood to be safe and secure so that every mother, every father feels safe walking their child through whatever neighborhood they choose to live in.
Thank you very much. That's Daun Hester, current councilwoman for Norfolk, and Mayor Paul Fraim. That leaves
Thanks.
you as the wrapping it up here.
Okay, I'll try. I am Paul Fraim. I've been a member of the Norfolk City Council for 24 years now. I've been mayor for the last 16. Unlike my friend Dan, I think the city's made a lot of progress, and I think most of the citizens would agree we've come a long way certainly in the last 16, and in the last 24 or 25 years. In the last 4 years since I've been the popularly elected mayor, I've focused on several things, one of which is lightening the tax burden on our citizens. No city in Hampton Roads has reduced their tax rate more than the city of Norfolk has over the past 4 to 5 years. The tax burden on the individual citizen in Norfolk right now is lower than the individual who lives in Virginia Beach or Chesapeake or Newport News, and that wasn't always the case. We've been able to do that because we've been very aggressive in expanding our economy and expanding our tax base. In the last 4 years, the tax growth, the assessed tax value of the city, real estate value, has grown from just under $12 billion to just over $19 billion. Well, actually more than $19 billion. So that's about a 62 or 63% run up in a city that was already 95% developed. We didn't have some cornfield to drop a subdivision in. So we've worked hard to expand the tax base. We've grown the job base as well. The newspaper reported the other day, if you want a job in Hampton Roads, you should come to Norfolk. Almost as many people looking for jobs as there are jobs available, and I think that's a record that I can run on. We've made a difference in people's life, and those are results.
Thank you very much. So now I hope what we can do is just have a conversation, because there are 4 of you, which makes it a little bit different. It'd be very helpful to have a conversation about what distinguishes you, what sets you apart. We've talked a little bit about your priorities, and that's certainly a great place to start. Daun Hester, you talked about the issue of schools being important, and I think that anybody who has followed what's been happening in Norfolk knows there have been quite a number of issues with regard to schools lately, and a sense that communication perhaps isn't quite what it should be. So I want to ask all of you to weigh in on this, but what about the question of schools? What responsibility does City Council have around that, and what as mayor would you do to instill more confidence in the citizens in the schools?
Well, I do know that communication is key in all areas, not just with Norfolk Public Schools, but we do have to figure out better ways to communicate. That's one of the reasons that I talk about televising everything, even the school board meetings, because that makes for a more informed citizen. And so it also gives them an opportunity to engage in the process, ask questions or better questions, and then help even with offering some solutions. We do have a good school system. It has had its challenges. I hold myself accountable as the elected official who is responsible for providing dollars for our schools. And I think it is important for the leadership to stand up together and say that we are working to make our schools be the best that they can be. We're open to all partnerships that can come in, and we want all of our children to be educated. But we also need to look at things in a different way. Our schools need to be open 12 to 13 hours a day, not just a few hours a day. They need to become places where family literacy can be a part of teaching and learning, where training opportunities can take place.
Mayor Fraim, and then we'll come around to our other candidates as well.
Yeah. I'm committed to improving the public education system here. Like Daun, I think we have an excellent system. Obviously, it needs some work. All 4 of my kids graduated from Norfolk Public Schools and got a great education. I've got an advanced degree, a master's degree in education. My wife was a teacher, and so we've been involved in the system. The City Council role in the school system is to fund the budget request or to see what dollars can be made available. We've done that fully funded the school board budget 9 of the past 10 years. And then we also appoint the members, and so to the extent that there's been a lack of communication about some of the problems in the system, most specifically about some of the testing irregularities, we got that information late. Our understanding is some of the school board members got the information late.
And I want to direct this to the two of you because you are currently on council. Do you stand behind the school board as it's currently configured?
What do you mean with the people who are there that we have appointed?
The appointed school board members who are currently serving.
I think it's important for us to appoint them because they're volunteers and they're just
working so hard. But you stand behind the folk who are there currently.
Yeah, I think we have a good school board. I mean, they have a difficult time right now. Some of the personnel issues they cannot discuss in public. There needs to be accountability for sure. I understand they've taken some corrective action already, but those are internal to the system. I think we have a good school board, and I think, with the exception of some irregularities with some of the testing, in which I think the reports that you're reading in the newspaper about the irregularities were reports that the school system actually produced. Okay. And so they're working at it.
Mr. Cooper, you're probably one who's closest to the education system at the moment as a student yourself. And I wonder, as you look at these issues that the school system is facing, what are your thoughts about what ought to happen there?
Well, I mean, there are obviously some kinks that need to be worked out, but that's just a process of kind of ironing everything smooth. There have been, some troubled times. For instance, for a little while there, the Norfolk public school system wasn't able to fail children, and that was a huge deal. Everyone was kind of up in arms about that. I mean, I think that was something that probably should not have been implemented. Or if it was, it should not have been done so quickly without proper communication on it, and that kind of comes into play because of this waiting for the storm that we've now coming that has been apparent for the past couple of years, that this was going to come from state. They were going to cut all this funding, and then we were going to have to try and make up for that. And what can we do? And it's very difficult. I think that the school board members who are up there right now are doing okay. Pretty good, all things considered. But
and Mr. Montague, how about you? I want to get you to weigh in on the school board question and on the state of the schools.
Well, I nominate myself every year in protest because I believe in an elected school board. Okay, but my mother was a teacher over in Portsmouth for over 30 years. She taught the 2nd grade at James Hurst and Craddock. I remember her saying time after time, all people don't learn all things at the same speed. We have got to quit doing all this testing and start teaching again, because nowadays everything has got to be a test, and it's not working.
But those are very often state mandates.
I know, but the thing about it is, if something is not working, you have to challenge it. You can't let it keep pushing you down, say. And the main thing that bothers me is the dropout rate in the city of Norfolk. For every kid that drops out of high school, there is a good chance he'll end up in prison. And the thing about it is, he or she will never have a decent paying job. And this is one thing we have got to stop.
So I want to ask both of you this question because you are not currently sitting on council. As you think about the priorities for council, and as you look at that with the outsider's perspective looking in, what would you do differently than council has currently done?
I think that there needs to be a focus more on, back towards the basics, We have
Such as?
Such as, you know, the city services, public safety, education. Those are two good ones we've already been talking about. But for instance, the flood prevention, the road work and things, there's been a very strong push for development, and downtown because of that is looking fantastic. I mean, it's beautiful. The fountains and things they've never been better. But I think now is time to turn in a different direction and make sure that we've got everything else kind of taken care of and solidified before we move on with any more major development.
Mr. Montague?
Are we still talking about the school system?
No, I think what we're talking about now is what you would do differently than what's currently been done by City Council.
Oh.
I have a feeling you'll need longer than a minute, but that's all I have for you.
I would completely flip it over. For the simple reason is we don't do things around here in the proper way. I told the City Council long before they ever turned the first shovel of dirt, I let the first contract out on light rail to make sure all their T's were crossed and all their I's were dotted. I said because construction companies live on change orders, and you will see that it's all come to bear. I have told the City Council all this stuff because of my experience. I have lived all over this country. When I don't see things that are done right, I had to work on it for 10 years to have an elected mayor, because I know that all cities that are prominent cities have an elected mayor. And I just want things different around here.
So let's talk about light rail, because that's certainly a huge challenge for the city at the moment, and I want to ask both of you about light rail.
Sure. First of all, I think transportation is one of the great challenges that we have for the future. People are having an increasingly difficult time getting in and out of the city. We have an enormous job base here, and if people can't get to their jobs, the jobs will go to the people. And so we want to make sure that people can get in and out from their workplace. Light rail is a part of that answer. We're the smallest city in the country to try to forge ahead with building a light rail system. It's still, even with the cost overruns, the most cost-effective, cheapest light rail system that's been built in the nation in the last 20 years. I was with Peter Rogroff, the head of the Federal Transit Administration, Tuesday, and he agreed with that. The light rail system, the federal government required that HRT, as the regional transit administrator, be the contractor who managed the construction of the light rail system, not the City Council, not the Commonwealth, who had a lot more money than we did, and certainly not the federal government, who had the great bulk of it. In the documents, the oversight responsibility for the overruns was the FTA, and they acknowledged that. And that's why I think they'll be willing to help us. Light rail is going to be a huge advantage to not only Norfolk, but to the region as well, and it's already leveraged this thing we call high-speed rail, intercity rail, coming to downtown Norfolk.
Ms. Hester?
Well, of course, I think the more that we can do to move people from their cars into mass transit is wonderful. But we do have to do more to help people get to that point. Because even with this starter line that we have, we know that we're going to have to expand it at some point to get down to the base, to get to the airport. But even by then, you know, we still have to get into Chesapeake and Portsmouth. So we have to create a system that people will choose to get out of their car and get into.
But you're still committed
and
to
provide mass transit. We can't stop now. I mean, we're too deep into this, so there's no turning back on this. We want to make sure that it is properly done at this point, that we are staying on top of how the dollars are spent. I am glad that you can go on the HRT site and you can now see where and how dollars are spent and when they're spent. I think that's important for building public trust, which is important, and that's what we have to get back to, the public trusting that we are spending their dollars appropriately.
In the case of your candidacy, one of the things we read is that if you do not win, you will lose your council seat, and you've had that for a long time. I wonder what it was about this moment in time that caused you to risk what I know is important to you, what has been important to you.
It is important to me, and I think that's why the citizens are being supportive now in my run, because they know that I stood up to take a risk, but it was for them, because I do want citizens to be more engaged in the process and feel and be involved. I want us to begin to listen to some of the ideas that our citizens have who are living in their neighborhoods day to day, who are having challenges in their communities. And so that is why I stood up. I've tried for 14 years to work, and we have done some good things. I'm not going to take that away. But there are more things that can be done, and you need a person who thinks a little different, really quite a bit different.
When you say a little differently, what do you mean by that?
And thinking outside of the box and bringing different partners to the table, how you bring partners to the table, and how you have them interact with you. Government can't do everything, we know that, but we need to start working with other people to collaborate. And it's a collaborative leadership style.
And Mayor Fraim, I think, go ahead. Several of our guests, and I think you mentioned this as well. The downtown is looking lovely, but there's concern, as you know, out in neighborhoods, in Ward's Corner and other sections of the city, about when it's going to be their turn.
Sure. And one of the reasons we work so hard to develop downtown is because that's our most expensive property, and we get the greatest yield from it. We spend off tens of millions of dollars in every budget that filters out into the neighborhoods to help build rec centers. We've opened 2 this year at Lambert's Point and Norview, to build libraries like the one that we just opened in Ocean View a couple years ago. We've rebuilt neighborhoods. We spent millions and millions of dollars in Ocean View over and above what we would normally spend. Part of the increased assessments the past several years had been in Ocean View and in the north end of the city. We're at Broad Creek. We have numbers of communities that we're working on, both in the center of the city, on all sides of it, and the neighborhoods are making a lot of progress right now. But a lot of that is coming because the revenue we're getting from being heavily invested in creating jobs and economic development is allowing us to create revenue which we're spending in our neighborhoods.
We've got just a few minutes left, and the city manager just released a budget, and that's the person whose job I do not envy. I don't know how these city managers do that across this region, to take limited funds and sort of disperse them the best they know how. But one of the proposals, and I want to ask those of you who are challenging about, was to close rec centers 1 day a week and to close libraries 1 day a week, just to because of what the budget situation is. Just want to ask each of you to respond. You're shaking your head, so I know you've got something to say.
You can't do that for the simple reason is when the kids don't have anything to do, they get in trouble. And anyway, as long as you got the libraries and the rec centers open, that's something for kids to do.
All right. How about you, Mr. Cooper? What do you think?
I think this is once again another example of a government, be it a locality or otherwise, taking cuts from an area in which doesn't deserve it. I mean, we see the cuts that the state is making for schools when they could have been making cuts in other venues. And
so where should the city manager make the cuts instead?
Well, I think that co-op projects and development projects could withstand those cuts much more than our public libraries and our rec centers, which are completely dependent on the city, can take that. I mean, we have a lot of investment money that goes towards projects where they some of the money comes from the city and some of the money comes from private developers. Together they come and they'll build something. And in those situations, maybe the private developers could pony up a little bit more of the money there in order to keep some public libraries open.
One of the other proposals, and we just have a very few moments left, but one of the other proposals has to do with this Salvation Army Center, the Kroc Center, and these are being funded, all over the country. And I think you've said, Mr. Montague, if I'm not mistaken, that you're opposed to that because of the issue of purchase of land. Do I have that wrong?
No,
if I do correctly?
the thing of what I said was that all should have been private. The city should have never had to pony up the money. They should have had private donors to give them that
All right.
money.
Well, let's let the folk who are already on council and also running respond to that.
The Kroc Center, the Kroc Foundation is prepared to put as much as $52 million into building the Kroc Center. What they've asked of the city is to assemble the property where they can build this 40,000 square foot space. On Monday, I'm going to Atlanta to visit a Kroc Center with some people some people who are prepared to commit tens of millions of private dollars to create an endowment that will make sure the Kroc Center will continue to function. What Dan is talking about is a $900,000 piece of property that would leverage a $42 million gift to the city plus tens of millions of dollars in other private money.
Well, I've always been supportive of the Kroc Center, and I'm pleased that we were selected as a site. It has been challenging, probably because it hit during hard economic times, but as we are emerging with this new economy, I think it is important. I've just talked about partnerships and collaborations. You have to do that. If somebody's providing, and it's no different than the Slover Library, no different than the proposal from the Y, and the partnership with community donors who are willing to support that effort as well. Those are the types of things that we have to look to in order to build new structures. But we do have to concentrate also on developing our people so that they'll use and protect those properties when we build them.
Well, boy, I want to thank all of you for being with us. I know that campaigns are exhausting, and I said it before we went on the air, but I really mean it. I think that any time someone offers themselves for public office, it's a great gift to all of us. So thanks to all of you for what you're giving and for what you're offering and for the amount of time you spend on the campaign trail and all of the rest of it. And we will see the results first Tuesday in May. Well, as for this broadcast, if there's something you wanted to go back and hear again, you can watch any of our programs anytime online at whatmatters.tv. While you're there, you can tell us what you think. Be kind and gentle. We always appreciate that. Well, we are talking about politics, so what are you going to do? You can sign up for our weekly newsletter there, so we'll let you know what we have in the works just as soon as we know what we have in the works. For more local talk, I sure hope you'll join us weekdays at noon. The show is called Hearsay. It's on 89.5 WHRV from noon to 1. You can either listen in live or you can listen and call. Either way you prefer to participate, we'd be glad to have you. Thanks again for watching. I'm Cathy Lewis. We'll see you next time for another look at What Matters.